Greetings. In the following presentation, we will undergo an understanding of George Orwell's essay, Shooting an Elephant. Now, this particular essay, we will view it from under the framing of the cause and effect genre. Now, with that said, it should be understood that this particular essay, it's certainly multifaceted and it has the capability of also being analyzed under several other genres. It can be analyzed under a persuasive genre. It can be analyzed under a narrative genre, right? So, I mean, such a rich essay and can be looked at from many framings. But for this particular framing, we're going to view it from a cause and effect understanding. Now, the writer, George Orwell, he's certainly an iconic writer. He's an iconic individual. He's an individual, you know, he was an essayist, a novelist. Some of his novels include 1984, Animal Farm, right, amongst others. He was also a critic, right, a literary critic. And above all, I think, more than anything, is that he, in essence, he wrote content that was, in a sense, revolutionary, right? He wanted to change the status quo in reference to structures of power, and we see this with like Animal Farm, you know, these ideals about communism. He sees, I mean, he doesn't just lay it out there that it's all glorious and great, right? He shows the complexity of the oppression of undertaking a communist stance. 1984, right? This idea of Big Brother watching all the time, you know, and he kind of positions these ideals of power, so to speak. Well, he's certainly going to do that with this particular essay, and very effectively. So, just to reiterate an understanding of the cause and effect genre, it should be understood that when we deal with cause and effect, it's not uncommon to acknowledge that many causes lead to many effects. But when we do that causes to effects, writing can get really messy. So I think good writers, what they'll do is they'll narrow it down, shifting and going from like one cause to many effects, or many causes to one effect, right? And even if there are other effects or if there are other causes, I mean, we can write additional essays on that, but the point is that it's much more effective when you emphasize one particular cause to several effects, or several particular causes to an effect. I mean, I think in terms of writing, this is just a more effective way of going about it. Well, for this particular essay, this is what I'm going to generalize as his thesis. This is what I'm going to generalize as his argument. The argument is as follows. Power colonialism as a dominant structure forces individuals to act in ways that contradict their own beliefs and moral values, thus leading to a sense of internal conflict and the loss of individual agency. So the cause here, it's obvious. Or I shouldn't say it's obvious, right? But I think if one reads the essay carefully, it doesn't take very much to see that this is an essay in which there's this idea of power, particularly in terms of colonialism, right? This is when Orwell was an officer, and he was in this part of Asia, so to speak. And well, what's the issue with colonialism? And this is what he's getting at with this particular essay, interestingly. That colonialism, it's not, even if you are in power, it's not necessarily a good thing, right? In fact, one of the effects is that it applies a type of internal conflict. And in addition, it also applies a loss of individual agency. So keep a marker on this cause and effect relationship of power in terms of colonialism and its impact on a person's sense of internal conflict, and also this loss of individual agency. Okay. Well, let's go through it and let's observe how this argument manifests itself. Well, um, Orwell, he's writing about his stance as a colonial power, representative of colonial power. How he's writing about his stance in Moulmein, in Lower Burma. And just to give you some context of where Burma is situated, you can look there on the map. You see China a little bit to the north, and you see India towards the west. Now, of course, the British are not just going to colonize Myanmar, right, Lower Burma. They're not just going to colonize that area. They're also going to go about. They're going to attempt to colonize India. They're going to attempt to colonize China, right? And you're going to have all these sources of attempts of revolution. The people are certainly not just going to accept this colonization of sorts. But anyhow, that's for another talk, right? This particular talk, Orwell wants to situate the effects of colonialism upon him while colonizing Myanmar. So he is a British police officer, right? He is even if we can infer and we can see that he's not all that happy with his role as a British colonialist police officer, right? But you should note the following: when you read this essay, in order to show the effects, right, in order to show the destructive effects of colonialism, it should be noted, it should be acknowledged that what Orwell's going to do, and this is his cleverness as a writer, what he's going to do is he's not going to write as the good guy, because I think that would defeat that would make it very difficult for him to show the effects. I mean, it would, argumentatively, anyways, it might not be as effective in getting his message across. So in this story, he's saying he's gonna identify himself, excuse me, as the colonialist power. He's gonna say, "Look, I am that infamous colonialist power, right? I am that sense of power that people, in essence, don't like, right? That you should, in essence, push away, right? That you shouldn't side with, so to speak." So he's going to undertake that identity. Okay. So as he tells his essay, he situates the context of where he's at, and he says, here I am. I'm in this Lower Burma context, and all these many Burmans, right? All these many Burmese people. There's thousands of them, and what do? They jeer at Europeans, right? They mock us, they laugh at us. How dare they? Can't they see we are in essence the power? We are in essence the power to be, right? Or the power that is, right? At least during that time. So Orwell then says, I had already made up my mind that imperialism was an evil thing. So this is interesting, right? I mean, he's undertaking this identity as the colonial power, but then he says, "Look, I had already made up my mind that imperialism was this evil thing." Is Orwell here seeking for some sense of sympathy, or some sense of or people to be conscientious and sympathetic to the imperialist, right? I'm not sure, right? I don't necessarily think so, but it's interesting that he says this. So now here's the colonialist power, but he's saying, and this is where we're going to get to this cause and effect scenario. He's saying, look, I'm in power, but I'm also noticing that imperialism was an evil thing, and not just an evil thing for the Burmese people. I think he's also getting at the fact that this imperialism was also an evil thing onto himself, onto his his fellow colleagues, his fellow police officers. Right. So Orwell continues. He says, "Secretly, I was all for the Burmese." So this is also interesting, right? Is this the voice of treason? If he, why are you a British police officer yet you're all for the Burmese? This is a unique this is a unique feeling of sorts. Well, it does get a little away from the argument that he's trying to say, but if anything, it helps us see into his conscientiousness. It helps us see into the conscientiousness of Orwell, who's acknowledging imperialism as a bad thing, even if he is, in fact, the enactor, the manifester of this imperialization, right? This colonization. So he's aware. He's aware that it's a bad thing. So he says, and here's kind of, we're going to flip it back a little bit, where he says, with another part, I thought that the greatest joy in the world would be to drive a bayonet into their guts. Right? I am the colonist, and I'm tired of you jeering at me, tired of you mocking me, tired of you, making fun of me. So, a part of me wants to, I mean, what's he, is he being sincere in this quotation? I don't know. I personally don't want to say that he is. I think what's happening is, again, I think Orwell is undertaking the identity of the colonist. This is what so now you see what's happening. Now you see Orwell in undertaking this persona of the tyrannical colonist. You see him desiring the sense of bloodshed, to another human entity, right? So we can infer here that sense of internal conflict is that he sees imperialization as a bad thing, but at the same time, you see how it foils his internal consciousness, right? It's like this internal seesaw back and forth between him as a colonizer and the effects that colonization has upon his very psyche. As projected as they project colonization onto the people. Okay, so then so he gives this little bit of a kind of like a precursor, showing the difficulties of this imperialization as he's about to tell the story. So the story's about to begin here. He says, I get a phone call from a sub-inspector at a police station. So here's one of his colleagues, and he says, he gives me a phone call, and well, he says an elephant was ravaging the bazaar. So here's this elephant that's out there. It's out on the loose, and it's creating all sorts of chaos. So here's this representation of the elephant, right? I'll speak a little bit about the symbolism of this elephant. In essence, it's the protagonist is indeed Orwell. But the other notable protagonist, at least in the thematic sense, is indeed going to be this elephant, right? And we'll speak a little bit about what this elephant indeed represents, so to speak. So Orwell, he sets out to take out his old 44 Winchester. Now, um, I guess this is a standard rifle, but it's not it's not the type of rifle that you're going to be able to kill an elephant with. So the point is, he takes out this rifle, and so again, we'll speak in just a little bit about how the symbolism of what this rifle represents, and the symbolism of the elephant, and perhaps the initial ineffectiveness of this rifle upon the elephant. So Orwell says, well, look, this elephant here, um, he must have gone. He he goes about and he ravages the bazaar because it was in must, right? Meaning, it was an elephant that was in heat. I mean, that's the commentary. Well, symbolically, right, representatively, what Orwell's trying to, you know, symbolically, what Orwell's going to try to get at is that um, the elephant is very much this representation of the effects of colonization upon both the oppressed and the oppressor, upon the colonizer and the colonized. So here's this elephant, right? And in a sense, when the colonizer comes upon a country, comes upon a colony, uh, um, what occurs is um, what occurs and what happens is the people um, are restricted in their freedom, right? They can't just act openly, freely, amidst their own will. They have to follow the norms that the colonizers set upon them. After all, we, the colonizers, we are civil. We know better than these colonized individuals that are unaware of what it means to be a civil citizen. And it is through us, and it's through our duties that we're going to we're going to better, right, their country. They're going to live better because of us. Well, of course, that's the myth, right? But so in essence, their sense of cultural relevance or cultural relativism or what have you, whatever the people's beliefs or desires must be. Well, those are kind of repressed. Those are set aside. The people can't act upon what their own personalized, maybe traditional, maybe ancestral traditions tell them to do. Um, the colonizer comes in and tells them that they must do otherwise. But they must do as what they feel is better, what they conceive as being better. Right? So the elephant's out on the loose, right? It's and why does the elephant grow violent? Well, symbolically, when you repress a people, they you can't blame them for becoming revolutionary, right? They desire that sense of freedom, right? So this elephant's out and about, and the maut, the individual that's the one in charge of the elephant, right? And perhaps usually when there's an individual when the colonizers enter a particular colony, right? In this case, Lower Burma, when they enter, um, they give certain power to some of the natives, and they tell the natives, okay, look, you oversee your community, right? And you tell them they must act a certain way for their own good, so to speak. So Orwell then, he's relating how this the person in charge of the elephant, they call him out, and when he went out to seek where the elephant went to, he goes the other way, right? He goes the other way because he thinks the elephant's gone the other way. Well, it could also be sometimes, it's a political issue in that sometimes these people that the imperialist powers put in power, well, they turn a blind eye when they see their people revolutionizing. I mean, maybe it comes to heart that they love their own, right, more than the imperializer, even if the imperializer does indeed give them a type of power, so to speak. I'm not saying this is what happened particularly here, but it's a consideration. Okay. So what's happening with this elephant? Okay, so here's the elephant. It's destroying everything. It destroys the bamboo hut. It kills a cow. It raids some fruit stalls. It's running amok, right? It's running amok. And so here's Orwell heading towards a finding of the elephant. And when it sets out to finding the elephant, it's asking, it sees the people, and the people say this way and that way and over there and over here. So it's this idea that this elephant's been everywhere. So symbolically, again, the sense of revolution, right? It's everywhere, right? I mean, it's the umbrella of revolution. Once you oppress a people, the umbrella of evolution just hovers about everywhere, right? So he doesn't realize exactly where to pinpoint his efforts until he sees a couple of the mothers, or a couple of women rather, and they express, "Go away, child. Go away this instant." So they're telling the children to go elsewhere. And why are they doing this? Well, they're telling the children to go elsewhere because um, there's a dead body there, right? The elephant has just killed uh, uh, um, a fellow Burmese person, and so Orwell is inferring that such a revolution, right? Such this revolutionary act. Well, it can't be controlled so easily. The representation of the Winchester rifle as a type of, maybe representative of a type of force. So he requests, he tells one of his helpers, or ask a friend if he could borrow the elephant rifle, right? So he needs allies to bring about control, right? To bring about control on this elephant, aka this revolutionary fervor of sorts. Orwell states, they had not shown much interest in the elephant when he was merely ravaging their homes. But it was different now that he was going to be shot. Right. So here's the thing, right? So um, when when this elephant's coming around and it's destroying these homes, right? Or rather, um, I guess altering, corrupting, uh, um, um, a sense of chaoticism of the homes, so to speak. Um, what occurs is Orwell comes about, and he says, Well, now that they're realizing that the elephant's going to be shot, now there's a sense of interest. Does that mean that Orwell's going to undo with this revolution? It's not the case at all. By shooting the elephant, right? The elephant, remember, um, the sense of chaos that the elephant is undergoing, the sense of chaos is occurring because of colonization. So, so what is it that um, the shooting of the elephant symbolizes? Well, upon shooting the elephant, it's a type of message where Orwell seems to be saying, I'm going to undo the shackles of colonization. So the people are now fervorously happy, right? So Orwell states, I knew with perfect certainty that I ought not to shoot him, right? And why is that? Well, he's the colonizer. He should not shoot the elephant because if he shoots the elephant, right, shooting the elephant represents a removal of the shackles upon the people, right? It's in a sense, the shooting of the elephant is a type of representative type of freedom, if you will. Orwell continues, when the white man turns tyrant, it is his own freedom that he destroys. For it is the condition of his rule that he shall spend his life in trying to impress the natives, do what the natives expect of him. So the here's the complexity of that elephant. So that elephant is one. It's the revolution of the people upon being oppressed. It's the shackles of colonization that the elephant also represents, right? And it is also the self-oppression on the colonizer's sense of agency. So I am the colonizer. So as I come upon the people and I show them that I need to model for them what the norms of colonization should be. And by following the norms of colonization, yes, by following these norms of colonization, um, the colonizer, right, the imperialist, uh, does not have its own sense of agency. I can't just act upon my will either, right? I have to exemplify, right, the norm, the normativity of colonization. This is what I must do, right? This is what I must model for the people. And so in this way, uh, um, it's kind of when somebody's a leader, right? A sahib, if you will. If you're a type of leader, you, to a certain extent, you're under this all seen umbrella where everybody's looking to you as a role model of sorts, right? So, to do otherwise, you're going to immediately be critiqued. So here's Orwell standing up the stance. He's about to shoot the elephant. They are the people, and the people, of course, are happy. They're looking forward to it. They want the elephant to be shot because this colonizing, multifaceted entity, it's affecting them as it is affecting the colonizer. Orwell states, when I pulled the trigger, I did not hear the bang or feel the kick, but I heard the devilish roar of glee that went up from the crowd. So what is this? What is this implying? What is Orwell in essence doing? Right? The crowd is happy. The crowd is happy because, to a certain extent, again, the shooting of this elephant. Remember, the elephant is very multifaceted. In one sense, it's the repressed freedom of the people, right? It's a freedom that they don't have. At the same time, right? It's also a type of it's also kind of like a type of ordinance upon the colonizer who must act a certain way. So in this case, the crowd is happy with the shooting of this elephant. The crowd is happy because it's again once again it's a type of unshackling of the chains upon their freedom. So the crowd is the crowd is certainly in glee. Orwell continues. And then down he came, his belly towards me, with a crash that seemed to shake the ground even where I lay. Um, so so by the tricky thing about it is when the colonizer goes into a place, the colonizer goes into the place truly under the belief. At points, sometimes it can be a myth of sorts, but quite often they go with a sincere belief that they're doing that area a particular good. Right? These people don't have us. They're uncivilized, developing country. It's going to be chaos for them, so uh, um, they should be grateful for us. Um, so he's truly, by shooting this elephant, it it's this undoing of power as well. It's this undoing of power. Why? Because the imperialist never wants to admit that they're wrong. How could they? They are the power that be. How can the power that be ever admit defeat? Orwell continues, powerless to move and yet powerless to die. So, how does an imperialist country, give up its right to colonize? How does an imperialist country give up its right to colonize? Right? And this is, I guess, this is where this is what Orwell's inferring, when he says it's powerless to move and yet less powerless to die. So, you have, as you're imperializing this other country, you're never really truly in complete power. You're never truly in complete power. Why not? Because that element of revolution is always lingering, right? And so, you're the sense of a type of at ease type of power, it's non-existent, and so there's a sense of discomfort, right? There's a sense of imbalance, frailty. We've got to keep. We can't just do things with an open sense of agency. We're kind of at the mercy of the way this context of imperialization takes place. Right? Orwell states, Burmans were bringing daws, knives, and baskets, stripped his body almost to the bones. Well, when you consider freedom, right, that you're obtaining freedom, can you blame the Burmans for doing that? Right? This is our freedom at stake. You can take away anything from a person, but I guess the most valuable thing for anyone is truly that sense of freedom. I mean, freedom is priceless, I guess, as they would say, right? towards the end, he does give a very complex statement, and he says afterwards, he shoots the elephant. The people, of course, happy and things of the sort. Afterwards, I was very glad that the laborer had been killed. It put me legally in the right, and it gave me a sufficient pretext for shooting the elephant. So, um, what's getting at here? So here you would always you might have to infer that Orwell is absorbing and grasping this ideal that um, colonization in and of itself is also pressing the colonizer. So, but the colonizer just has to accept the prescription of imperialization. They just have to accept it because they're the power that be. I mean, the irony is that they're the power that be, but they're really not the fact that they don't hold any sense of agency almost undoes their power. I mean, granted, yeah, by force they have more force, but their sense of power is really frail. So, when he says that the laborer had been killed, this notion of colonization, uh, um, it gives me a legal right to shoot the elephant, right? And so he's not going to look. It allows him not to look like a fool. And he says, I often wondered whether any of the others grasped that I had done it solely to avoid looking like a fool. Um, so why is he shooting it to avoid looking like a fool? Because under colonization, the colonizer is also a fool. Why a fool? Because one, he's admitting, he's giving the testimony that I, the colonizer, I don't agree with this. I don't agree. I'm siding with the Burmese people, even though they do want me to drive the bayonet through them, right? But nevertheless, I'm siding with them, and yet this colonization aspect is it's really because I have no agency. I'm looking like a fool. I'm looking terrible, and thus ends the story. So you see how one end you've got this conflict inside of power, but at the same time, that so-called power is also a type of enslavement on the colonizer. Um, and also, the other notable issue is that you're also losing your sense of agency, your sense of will, so to speak. Okay. Well, I hope this helps you understand shooting an elephant. It is one interpretation. I mean, there can be other interpretations. And I should also note that I had previously recorded this lecture, but I made some modifications. Right, I re-recorded it to clarify some things I felt I had not previously clarified. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it was a meaningful learning experience for you. And I thank you very much for listening. Thank you.